welcome back to Focus. Today, Steve Johnson here with you, and Laurie Cardoza-Moore. It's always great to have her with us. She's a founder and president of Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, and we've always had interesting conversations because of what's happening on the global scale as it impacts all of us when we have Laurie on here. Laurie, it's good to have you here. Thanks for coming and joining us today. Once again, it's only been 1 week since the election, and if you're like us, it seems like it's been 2 months.
Thank God it's over. That's all I can say. It's an exciting day. It's an exciting day to be an American and to be a believer in this country. God answered our prayers.
Well, you know, the news is still continuing because even up the street in Portland, we've had thousands of people now who have been protesting and arrests being made, and there's still a lot of things being unsettled there. So it's always good to get a perspective of what we might be seeing in the future, both here as well as around the nation. And I want to ask you about our relationship with Israel, but I want to mention something that you're quoted from the issue in the election. And you say on November 8th, evangelical Christians helped elect the next American president, and through the ballot box demonstrated that their dedication and love for Israel knows no limits. Let me ask you this. When you say that we helped elect the next American president, do you have any idea to what degree that was? Because the evangelical vote, while it was mentioned, didn't seem to be a huge issue during the campaign.
No, it's interesting that they didn't mention it, but we know we had the impact. There isn't a past presidential election or any major national election where we have mobilized the citizens, believers around the country to stand up and to vote. And in fact, some reports are saying 81% of the evangelical vote actually showed up. This is huge. There have been organizations, Franklin Graham, Lift the Vote, Steve Gill. There were organizations who mobilized across the country to remind Christians what is at stake. Christians stayed home during the last presidential election cycle, and unfortunately, we paid dearly for it. 4 years of Obama's policies was one thing, but to have to deal with 8 years of it it's unfathomable that Christians did not speak up, that they didn't show up, but they did this time. And this is a huge feat. And unfortunately, the press isn't talking about the impact that the evangelical vote had on this election. And all I can say is people were praying, people were fasting, people were educated. There were pastors who were speaking from their pulpit, telling their congregation, you must get out and vote. I know talk shows like yours, Christian talk shows, were reminding their listeners, you must go and vote. And so, thank God we have a reprieve. It's unfortunate to see what's happening in cities like Portland, Oregon, because there was a report that came out earlier, I think it was late yesterday, that a lot of these protesters didn't even vote. These people are paid protesters. This has the fingerprints of George Soros all over it. In fact, some of the people said some of the same people they were seeing at the Ferguson rallies, the Black Lives Matter rallies, are the same people showing up to protest. Imagine that.
Yeah. When you say 81% Christians voted a week ago, would you have been surprised that the number would have been that high? Because 81% of any category is actually quite a few voters.
Well, for the evangelical vote, that was tremendous. However, there are some polls that are saying 90% of the overall Christian vote, which includes the mainline denominations, Catholicism, the Presbyterians and others, coupled with the evangelical vote. So I think this sent a loud message to the elected officials. I think it awakened the sleeping giant who didn't show up last time. And I think that the politicians will be paying closer attention to the concerns addressed by the Christian community.
I think there's a lot of readjustment going on. I think there's no doubt about that. We'll have to see, because I was watching one of the alphabet networks during the election night, and I was amazed at how dumbfounded they were. And I thought that concerned me, because whether they agreed or disagreed, they should be more in touch with the pulse of the nation. And clearly they weren't, because they were just at odds of wondering how could this have happened. And I thought, well, that's more telling for the news agencies than anything else, I guess. Let's shift to what our relationship is with Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu. He came out, he had a speech that indicated he's looking forward to working with the new president. I couldn't help but think that it was a bit more of an upbeat speech than he would have given if it had been Hillary Clinton. That's just speculating it all. But also what I was thinking is, when is the first time he's going to come visit, and is he going to be allowed through the front door of the White House instead of the side door?
I think there's no doubt he'll have a marching band out there to greet him coming in through the front door. Trump will make sure that all the press get that shot. I'm sure Bibi, the prime minister, will be there post the inauguration, and he will be welcomed. Trump will be out there to greet him, to give him a warm welcome, to let him know he doesn't have to come through the back door or the side door or the servant's entrance. He can come through the front door once again, as it should be.
Do you find that these are, Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump, are these two individuals of the same mind, or is there a difference yet they will be compatible? How are you viewing their personalities and what the relationship will be?
On so many levels, I believe they're both on the same level when it comes to terrorism, addressing terrorism. Trump just said that he's going to introduce a bill to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. So the Prime Minister of Israel feels the same way. They both feel that Israel's security on a global level is critically important. So I think there are going to be a lot of opportunities for them to work together. Trump has said that he wants to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, declaring that Jerusalem is the eternal city of the state of Israel. That's a huge thing for any sitting president to say, and it has to be done. It needs to be done. And, you know, we looked at what just recently happened with UNESCO. We have these world leaders who are denying any Jewish history or historical ties to the Temple Mount instead of using the Temple Mount as the name of that holy site in Judaism. They're using an Islamic Al-Haram as the name. And of course, we just heard that Mahmoud Abbas has asked for the Dead Sea Scrolls. He wants UNESCO to get the Dead Sea Scrolls, take them out of the museum in Jerusalem, and give them to the Palestinians because the Dead Sea Scrolls belong to them.
Wow,
it's crazy. It's crazy to think that we're even having this discussion.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that latter part. That's kind of an interesting thing. We had a story this morning about how there's going to be a recurrent effort now to try to find more Dead Sea Scrolls, which will be a fascinating thing. They're trying to, in 3 months, find as many as they can if they're still out there. So that's pretty interesting. You know, I want to get back to moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Some people would say, well, okay, what's the big deal with that? But that really has a huge signal to the whole Middle East, doesn't it? If that action takes place?
To the Middle East and to the world, we have witnessed a movement of historical revisionism going on from the United Nations down to our local community. And we talked about this on the show, about the textbooks in our communities that are anti-Israel, that are anti-Judeo-Christian, anti-Bible, but pro-Islamic, pro-Muslim. Instead of telling the real facts about history, we're watching this revisionist history going on in places like Turkey, not just the United Nations. U.S. tax dollars going to fund textbooks being used by Palestinian kids that call for attacks, slaughtering Jews in Israel. So we see this happening. I think it sends a message, a critical message around the world to all the world leaders that we are going to stand on history. You know, if you look at the Ark of Titus in Rome, which has the inscription of the pillaging of the Temple Mount with all the artifact, with the golden menorah, the lampstand being carried off into Rome, but we're allowing at UNESCO, we're leaders and world leaders, UNESCO leaders, the United Nations is allowing for this history to be rewritten. Is It's very dangerous. We have to declare this. There's historical evidence substantiating this. And so if we don't start standing up, especially as Christians need to understand that if they rewrite Judaism's history, then Christianity is history, because we need Judaism. We are the branch off of Judaism. We are the wild olive branch that Paul talked about in the New Testament. So it's very important that we make sure that we're teaching these historical facts, not just communicating it to world leaders, but teaching it to future generations as well.
Let me get back just briefly to moving the embassy to Jerusalem. Do you care to speculate how soon you think that could be put into motion?
Yes, well, I believe Trump will be inaugurated on January 20th, and I believe that it's every 6 months that vote comes up before Congress. And every sitting president since 1995, I believe it is, has passed and basically stated because of security interests, the United States is not going to vote on it. So it gets pushed to the next 6 months, which comes up in November. So I think as early as May or June, when that vote comes back up, Trump will use that opportunity to send a message loud and clear that the United States stands with Israel, that Jerusalem is its holy capital, and we will protect it.
Sounds like you think Congress will follow that mode, that operation.
After the last election cycle, I don't think Trump's going to have a problem.
Let me just ask you before we leave you, because it's always interesting to hear what you have your thumb on the pulse of regarding all the changes. What other things could you see happening, whether it's with Israel or not, within, let's say, the first 30 days of the Trump administration? Do you have your shopping list of what you think will happen?
Absolutely. Of course, Israel is front and center, but some of the other issues that we're concerned about at proclaiming justice to the nations, and I want to encourage your audience to visit us at pjtn.org. But some of the other issues is Common Core. We've talked about this on previous shows, that as we just discussed, our textbooks are rewriting history. And the reason why they're rewriting history is because of Common Core. Now, many states have come out and have done what Mike Huckabee suggested doing, just change the name. And of course, unfortunately, Common Core is still being used in 37 states, at least 37 states that we know of in the U.S. So that's going to be an important component, because Trump has said he's doing away with Common Core. We are 28th in the nation, in the world, when it comes to education. We are behind third world countries. Why? Because we are dumbing down our children. And of course, Common Core is a direct result of that. The other issue is what's happening on our college campuses. You know, our next documentary, Boycott This, will be coming out. And of course, we are launching an anti-BDS campaign on college campuses across the U.S., even on the Christian universities. We've got a little bit of a problem there as well. Revisionist history going on within Christianity. So those are going to be things. Trump is not going to tolerate it. The fact that he's going to address the issue of the Muslim Brotherhood and designate them as a terrorist organization. And I'm sure, no doubt, that Trump will remove the 6 Muslim Brotherhood advisors that our current President Obama has advising him on not just national issues, but international issues as well.
You know, you may have talked about that, but I think that's a new concept for a lot of people. Let me ask you, do you have enough time to stay for another segment?
Sure, absolutely.
All right. We're talking with Laurie Cardoza-Moore. She's the founder and president of Proclaiming Justice to the Nations. And we're going to continue our discussion as we kind of speculate what may be happening when Donald Trump takes office in just really a little while. We'll continue our discussion with her coming up in just a few minutes right here on Focus Today.
I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.
Welcome back. This is Focus Today. Steve Johnson here with you, along with Laurie Cardoza-Moore. She's the founder and president of Proclaiming Justice to the Nations. And we're talking about the Trump presidency and what we can expect to see happening there. All sorts of things like the Tel Aviv embassy could be moving to Jerusalem. What will be the relationship, of course, with Benjamin Netanyahu, since it's, I think to put it nicely, it's been icy between President Obama and the Prime Minister of Israel there. But you mentioned something before we left about President Obama and his 6 Muslim Brotherhood advisors. Now, you may have mentioned this on previous programs, but I have a feeling some people are unaware of this. I've got to tell you, I'm kind of in the dark, too. What's been the scenario played out there? Are these Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood advisors? Who are these people, and what's the relationship?
These are members of the Muslim Brotherhood that Obama has surrounded himself with from the very beginning. And of course, we know that Obama, supposedly being a Christian, or we were told, who studied and was under the tutelage of Reverend Jeremiah Wright in Chicago. And of course, Reverend Jeremiah Wright, we know, is not a Christian. He teaches liberation theology, which is not biblical. And of course, Obama has surrounded himself with advisors, and that's why we see, or we did see, that he has surrounded himself with Muslim Brotherhood members advising him. We sit back and we look at some of the policies that Obama is implementing and some of the relationships that he's had with key leaders. We saw what he did in Egypt with Morsi, and we scratch our heads saying, wait a minute, you've got Egyptians who were rioting during the Arab Spring. We all remember back in 2011, they were rioting and they were holding up signs written in English to Americans saying, America, your president is supporting a Muslim Brotherhood member. You know, we find some interesting relationships and things that he did. Look at what happened with Iran. Signing a deal with Iran. This is something we would never have done under any other administration. But Obama did. When he, in 2009, when he went on his apology speaking tour, he went to Cairo, Egypt. He spoke there at Al-Azhar University, one of the most pro-Islamic Muslim Brotherhood universities in the world. We have some of those students, imams, who are teaching in our cities in the United States of America. They are teaching in our universities. So his whole association with the whole Muslim Brotherhood world, Islamic world, was very disturbing, even to the fact, as I said, that even average citizens in Egypt were complaining. If you look at his policies throughout the Middle East, every place Obama has gone with Secretary of State at that time, Clinton, he has created chaos and pandemonium. We were selling weapons to terrorist groups, ISIS. We look at all of the associations and how he basically was a sympathizer for them. It was a very dangerous, what happened over the last 8 years of this presidency was extremely dangerous. And as Christians, I want to just remind us that if we do not have godly leaders in places of authority over us, that they will bring in, and it says in the Bible, we are not to appoint foreigners over us. Now, a foreigner could be people who don't agree with our Judeo-Christian values. Obama clearly did not, and he was oppressive to us. Thank God he has answered our prayers, and he's given us this little bit of reprieve. And now we have to make up for lost time. There's a lot of damage that's been done. There's a lot of work still yet to be done.
Do you have any idea at all, maybe it's just speculation, but let me know, you have any idea who Donald Trump will surround himself with during his administration? We're seeing some people already kind of being ferreted out as possibilities for some cabinet posts and all that, but I would imagine he'd have some advisors. Do you have any way of knowing who those people might be?
Not at this time. It would be pure speculation, but I think a good indicator is to look at the people that he surrounded himself with during his campaign. I think that was very telling to us. Those were people, Newt Gingrich, Rudy Giuliani, Kellyanne Conway, the people that he were his closest advisors that were helping him navigate through this process. They understood what it was going to take. To me, that spoke volumes.
And the indication is that he is kind of taking some of those people and putting them into key positions. Rudy Giuliani, Secretary of State, possibly. That kind of surprised some people because I think some thought he might be a good attorney general and all the rest. I know we've had a lot of speculation around here about where Trey Gowdy could possibly be in an administration. Do you have any thoughts on whether he would stay where he is or move into a more active role?
I would love to see him on the Supreme Court of the United States. He would be fabulous. No, I don't know where he's going to be, but I would expect that if Trump is true to his tradition, whoever he's going to appoint for that seat, that's critically important. That's one of the key things that brought the Christian vote out. Was that Supreme Court appointment and the future appointments that will be. So I would like to personally see Trey on the Supreme Court. You
know, we've looked at the Supreme Court as saying this is possibly one of the reasons why people voted for Trump. If you come down to just a handful, that's one of the key things. You don't really have to have been a judge to be on the Supreme Court, do you? You can be just an average citizen pretty much, right?
That one is above my pay grade. I can't answer that question for you. I think the experience of being involved in the law and the legal judicial system is extremely helpful. And I think Trey Gowdy has the qualifications for that.
I know that some people had said that'd be great for Rudy Giuliani, then put Trey Gowdy as head of the Attorney General's office.
Oh, yeah, he would be a bulldog, too.
There, too, yeah. Well, that's pretty interesting. All right, so as we look forward to all of this, right now we do have some unsettled aspects in our communities throughout the United States. What's it going to take, do you think, to get things to settle down a bit? And I'm not sure what Donald Trump can do about it. Are other people going to have to take the lead to try to quell all this unrest that we've seen?
Well, I think that Obama has been trying to. He has publicly come out and he's made a couple of statements, but he has to do more. The leadership in our communities have to do more and tell these people, you know what? And I just want to say this. This is a prime example of what happens when we are teaching our children propaganda in our universities and in our secondary schools. These kids obviously have not been taught about what happens through the process of an election cycle in a constitutional republic. There is a transfer of government powers from one individual to another individual. And unfortunately, these kids have been propagandized with socialism. Look at the fact that, look at how many young people supported Bernie Sanders. This is frightening that this is happening in the United States of America. When you and I graduated from high school, we understood this whole process. We would never have been picketing and rioting because we didn't like Jimmy Carter or we didn't like, Obama. I mean, if there ever should have been protests, it should have been after the elections of his second elections, bringing him back into office by Christians. But you didn't see that happening because we understand the election process worked. The people voted, they spoke, they had their say, and now it's time to go back to business, back to work. These people that are protesting, like I said earlier in the program, these people are paid protesters. Compliments of George Soros, Black Lives Matter, it's the whole Ferguson group. All the same people are showing up at these protests across the country, and the leadership has to speak out and condemn this type of activity.
All right. Laurie Cardoza-Moore is the founder and president of Proclaiming Justice to the Nations. Great insight. Appreciate you talking to us about what we can expect. Of course, we'll be in touch with you, and I want to continue this discussion 30 days after Trump has taken the oath. All right?
Absolutely. I'll be here. God bless you.
You bet. Thanks for being with us. Appreciate it very much. And stay tuned. More Focus Today coming up.